Dear students and participants, families and friends, dear members of the Henri Dunant Prize Foundation, dear board members, dear faculty and teaching assistants, dear colleagues and friends, welcome to the 15th graduation ceremony of the Geneva Academy for International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights. It's a great pleasure to see you so numerous in this beautiful Pictet auditorium that is located in the Maison de la Paix, home of one of our parent institutions, the Geneva Graduate Institute, and to know that many more are attending this celebration online. This evening is special. It is made of light and shadow, joy and sadness. Let me start with the light. Light and joy, obviously, because we are gathered here to celebrate the success of a total of 116 students, including 65 students of our two full-time programs, the LLM in International Law and Humanitarian Law and Human Rights, and 32 students of the Master on Transitional Justice, Human Rights, and the Rule of Law, and of 49 participants of our Executive Master in International Law in Armed Conflicts. This is your success, dear students, and I sincerely congratulate you for this important achievement. It required hard work, intensive study hours, the capacity to adapt to different teaching methods, the ability to integrate different legal frameworks. This is a key aspect of our LLM program, and also to integrate different disciplines. This is true especially concerning the MTJ. It required also an aptitude for critical thinking and readiness to embrace different perspectives, notably through role plays. It included also the capacity to innovate, as demonstrated by the excellent master thesis you wrote. Most importantly, during the entire academic year, you displayed a genuine interest and passion for the subject covered by the Geneva Academy. You showed an ability to work individually and in teams in a collegial and respectful manner. You managed to juggle different priorities with exams, papers to submit, and even jobs, especially for the ex-MAS participants. You maximized your international Geneva experience through your internships and your participation in multiple events. Your engagement was evidenced by your participation in the Pictet competition, in extracurricular activities, in organizing your own study trips on top of all of your multiple academic activities. You cultivated the rich diversity that exists in our student body and that is so precious. You supported each other in situations of adversity. And support certainly came also from your parents, brothers and sisters, friends, and they should be congratulated and thanked as well, because strong and successful people like you have good and affectionate people around them. For all these reasons, i.e. the knowledge and skills you have and further developed, I am proud of you. I am convinced you will all, in your own way, bring light through your knowledge and values to our world in a turmoil. Yes, a world in turmoil, a world that is shadowed by the polarization of the international community, by the multiplication of armed conflicts, by egregious international humanitarian law and human rights law violations committed by belligerent parties, be they state or non-state actors, and by the exponential increase of humanitarian needs. There is no single day that passes without the media referring to allegations of such violations. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, as there are forgotten conflicts or tense post-conflict situations that continue to plague our world. These are subjects of profound concern for all of us. Our community, that is made of students, alumni, professors, researchers, actively engage in academy and policy debates touching precisely these difficult issues in various and complementary manners. The strength of academic institutions lies notably in the ability of its members to analyze complex and sensitive contexts in a scientific manner, as well as in the richness and plurality of viewpoints that can be shared in a safe space which further contributes to develop collectively new knowledge. As we gather here to celebrate, conflicts continue to affect countless lives. In this heavy context, some of our students have proposed a simple yet profound act, a minute of silence for the victims of current armed conflicts. This minute serves as a symbol of our collective commitment to work towards respect for international humanitarian law and human rights law, peace, reconciliation, and justice. It is a minute in which we can connect with the victims of armed conflicts and express our solidarity with their pain. I thank our students for this suggestion and propose to do a minute of silence now. Thank you. Please let me introduce you now Professor Andrew Clapham, who is a key professor in our faculty, a brilliant human rights law professor and amazing IHL expert, one of my predecessors, so a director who was director of the Geneva Academy for many years, and he will give opening remarks in the name of the Geneva Graduate Institute. Thank you, Andrew, for being with us.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Geneva Graduate Institute in the name of the director, Marie-Laure Sellers, who is very sad that she can't be with you this evening. And I wanted to thank the university and the rector for the support that they have shown to the Academy over the years. This is a joint center, as you've realized, between the University of Geneva and the Geneva Graduate Institute. It's been an experiment. It started out as a rather unique institution in the sense that it was more than just collecting all the professors from both sides of the lake and setting up a program. It was really an attempt to see how to create something that would be bigger than the sum of its parts. And so the institute and the university have used their networks and their expertise, I would say, to create a rather unique and I would say impressive program. Now, the organizers asked me to say something about where the Academy had come from. I think they were worried that I might take the opportunity to give a quick lecture on the right to life in armed conflict and my latest thoughts. So I'm just going to give a bit of a thumbnail sketch as to where the Academy came from and a bit of history and context. So there had been for quite a while in Geneva a working group to look at how to teach international humanitarian law at the level of a university program so that people would be prepared to go and work, for example, at the International Committee of the Red Cross or for militaries around the world. And the International Committee of the Red Cross, very ably represented here this evening, through its president and the head of its legal office, were pushing the university and the institute to set something up. And indeed, after a lot of meetings, a program was set up, a center, which was called the Centre Universitaire de Droit International Humanitaire. And in English, this became the University Centre for International Humanitarian Law. Now, not a lot of thought was given to the English version of the name of the centre, I have to say, and the acronym started to be used in French, CUDI, but in English that came out as You Kill. You Kill was not a great name for a humanitarian law centre. Now, around this time, the beginning of around 2003, we are going into the 60th anniversary of the UN Charter, and there was seen to be a need for a big reform. Big reform of the UN. Some of you here may vaguely remember this. It was a moment of renewal and the new millennium and time for a new way of organizing the world. And to cut a long story short, one of the key changes was to create a new body, a new UN organ, which would be called the Human Rights Council. And this was actually a proposal, in part, coming from Switzerland, a new member of the United Nations. And the President and Foreign Minister of Switzerland at the time was Khalmé Ray, whom many of you may know. And obviously, out of this was a sense that Geneva ought to be playing a bigger role in human rights than it had played up till now. Of course, we had the UN Commission on Human Rights, but I'm trying to give you a bit of historical context. This was the new dawn for human rights, the beginning of the millennium. And so it was decided that there would be a new institution called the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights. And some of us, as you heard, were involved in starting to build the syllabus for this. So there would be international humanitarian law, there would be human rights law, but also, you will know by now, as educated graduates of the Geneva Academy, that around this time, international criminal courts were in full swing, both the International Criminal Court for the former Yugoslavia and the International Tribunal for Rwanda. And so these were producing judgments. People were going to prison. And criminal law professors, particularly at the university, were starting to get very interested in this new thing called international criminal law, and they wanted to teach it. And you have to realize that international criminal law had not really done anything since Nuremberg, since 1946. It had lain, if you like, a bit of a sleeping beauty, dormant over all that time. And now was the moment. So we decided we should add international criminal law. So we would have international human rights law, international humanitarian law, and now international criminal law, 3 legs on the stool. But of course, the refugee lawyers said, well, how can you be teaching about the law applicable in armed conflict without talking about people seeking asylum, people fleeing armed conflicts and knocking at the doors of states and asking to be taken in, to be given refugee status or asylum, or other statuses. And so we added refugee law. And then we realized that in order to apply these 4 branches of law, one needed to understand public international law as well. How does the treaty work? How does the UN Security Council work? When can a state use force in self-defense? One would need all of that as well. So we added a 5th topic, public international law. So now we have 5 topics, a quintet of branches. But I suppose in drawing these remarks to an end, I wanted to suggest that law is not everything. Something could be perfectly lawful, but awful, even morally wrong. And my personal hope would be that you keep this constantly in mind as graduates of the Academy. Just because something is not prohibited in one of those 5 branches that you've learnt about does not mean that it's a good idea. Targeting a certain area might just feel wrong. Unleashing force to be considered legal as a matter of defense, self-defense, okay, but is it a wise course of action? Will it create an even greater series of threats to peace and security? Will lives be unnecessarily lost? Now, you could be thinking, but these are not questions for lawyers. But I'd like to think they are questions for academic graduates. you will have a special voice in decision making. You will probably be the most educated person in the room on the matters of international law being discussed. And as I contemplate the dilemmas facing decision makers in the contexts around the world, we could mention Sudan, Ethiopia, Israel, Gaza, and of course Russia, Ukraine, I'm beginning to think we might need a sixth branch at the Academy. I think we need to be thinking more about the right to peace. Welcome everyone to the Maison de la Paix. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Clapham, Andrew, for setting the scene so beautifully, bringing us back to the origins of the Academy and the current challenges and dilemma that our graduates and soon the alumni community, part of the alumni community, will have to face. Thank you very much. So now I'm happy to call for our keynote, Dr. Ahmed Al-Dawoody, who is legal advisor for Islamic law and jurisprudence at the International Committee of the Red Cross. He's also a member of our faculty. And the title of his keynote is Enhancing Protection in Armed Conflict, a Geneva Academy's Road to World Peace. Thank you very much, Dr. Al-Dawoody. You have the floor.
Good evening. Dear families and guests of our graduates, dear graduates, dear colleagues at the Academy, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be with you this evening. I'm truly honored and humbled. We are so proud of you graduates. A huge congratulations to all of our graduates, but also their families and friends. Let me begin by sharing the story or part of the story behind the subtitle of my speech. In preparing for this speech, I thought to start by reading some of the public speeches by the president of the ICRC and the Africa Regional Director at the ICRC. I chose Africa not because of my bias to the Academy, as Mr. Patrick Youssef is an alumna of the Academy, but mainly because most of the armed conflicts taking place now are in Africa. Also, all of the few colleagues at the headquarters of the ICRC that I reached out for documents or statistics to prepare for this speech did graduate from the Academy. Furthermore, while writing parts of this speech, I recalled that some of the colleagues I work with in the field also did graduate from the Academy. Today is a time to celebrate the achievements of our graduates, and therefore, I choose not to speak about my work, but the work of some of the graduates today. And since the topic of my speech focuses only on certain protection issues, I choose in the subtitle the singular road, because the Academy has so many roads to world peace. The rest of the story behind this subtitle will continue until the end of my speech. International humanitarian law, IHL, affords protection to people and property in armed conflict. However, as we just heard, violations of IHL cause devastating impacts through our deeply interconnected world on the lives of individuals, families, communities, cities, and sometimes entire regions, as well as our global security. In his opening remarks at the World Humanitarian Summit on 23rd and 23 May 2016, the United Nations Secretary General Mr. Ban Ki-moon mentioned that 80% of the humanitarian crises afflicting the world at the time are attributable to armed conflicts. And in 2022, a report by the International Rescue Commission confirms that armed conflicts remain the key accelerator of humanitarian crises, driving 80% of humanitarian need. Every year, I study the UNHCR's database containing information about forcibly displaced population and the numbers of armed conflicts classified by the ICRC. As for the numbers of forcibly displaced people, the UNHCR statistics show that at the end of 2022, there were 108.4 million forcibly displaced people worldwide. 52% originate from just 3 countries: Syria, Ukraine, and Afghanistan. And 38% are hosted in 5 countries: Turkey, Islamic Republic of Iran, Colombia, Germany, and Pakistan. So these statistics show that a huge percentage of forcibly displaced people worldwide originate from and are hosted in Muslim majority contexts. As for the numbers of armed conflicts today, there are more than 100 armed conflicts classified as such by the ICRC, involving more than 60 states and 100 non-state armed groups, identified as parties to those armed conflicts. The majority of these conflicts are non-international armed conflicts, which refer to violence of a certain intensity between a state and an organized armed group or amongst organized armed groups. In 2023, the ICRC estimates that there are over 450 armed groups that are of humanitarian concern globally. 30% of these armed groups are in Africa, 28% in the Near and Middle East, 18% in Asia and the Pacific, 15% in the Americas, and 3% in Eurasia. Significantly enough, as of July 2023, the ICRC estimates that at least 195 million persons live in areas controlled by non-state armed groups. I should add here that the ICRC confirms that these figures are not precise statistics, but merely rounded numbers. But anyway, these ICRC numbers show that a huge percentage of these armed conflicts are also taking place in Muslim contexts, and it's clear that there is a substantial percentage of non-state armed groups that use Islamic law as their source of reference and not IHL in these contexts. Last November, in this room, the president of the ICRC, Ms. Mirjana Spoljaric, said that, quote, "Some governments and non-state armed groups question the legitimacy of international humanitarian law. They take the view that IHL constitutes foreign imposition and use this argument to undercut its force," unquote. She said also that, quote, "In the logic of survival, room for humanity is difficult to find," unquote. Today, and in the same room, we are celebrating your success in finding so many rooms for humanity before, during, and after armed conflict. IHL principles are not foreign to Islamic, Chinese, Indian, and African civilizations, among many others. Last May, Ms. Spoliarik gave a speech to the UN Security Council on the protection of civilians titled, "It is clear the protection of civilians is a precondition for peace, stability, and recovery." And in a minute, I will give a few examples from the studies by some of you graduating today that can enhance the protection in armed conflict to illustrate the point I am trying to make in the subtitle. So you, my students, managed to use creative and innovative ways to universalize and reinforce respect for IHL. You have learned about another legal framework, another legal language, another software that can be used to enhance protection in armed conflict. You managed, and I'm hoping you will continue, to find rooms for humanity in such a difficult context. We know that conflict is bloody, and the toll on combatants and civilians every day is horrific and heartbreaking. Every day there are loss of lives, homes, hopes, gruesome injuries, torture, sexual violence, destruction of childhood, and dehumanization of others. So now I will refer briefly to 3 protection issues. Number 1, protection of detainees in armed conflict. This year only, the ICRC visited people held in 916 places of detention. Too often, conflict-related detainees are ill-treated, killed, go missing, or are held in inhumane conditions of detention. Marine Miranda gave a number of legal and policy advice to enhance humane protection of detainees in the hands of Islamic non-state armed groups. In her paper on detention by non-state armed groups, Marine says, quote, "Understanding the non-state armed groups' position provides valuable insights to engage with them on the application of IHL and the Islamic law of armed conflict and promote the rights of persons deprived of liberty in armed conflict. A failure to take into account the regional frameworks and the views of non-state armed groups ultimately weakens the protection of people affected by armed conflict," unquote. 2, protection of women in armed conflict. Women and girls are placed at the epicenter of armed conflicts. The daily brutal impacts of armed conflict on women and girls include sexual violence, rape, displacement, and reduced access to education. In the humanitarian sector, there is a shared concern which has almost evolved into a mantra. We must protect vulnerable groups, particularly women and children. This is the same concern that surfaces in Islamic law books that goes back to the 7th and 8th centuries. But what I wanted to stress here is that we have to look at women as the agents of their own lives. Listen to their needs and follow their lead. Anamika Pillai wrote a paper on prosecuting sexual violence crimes in armed conflict under Islamic law. And Kiara Sarunwala wrote a paper on sexual slavery in armed conflict and argues in her conclusion, quote, "A concentration on the similarities in the systems, i.e. IHL and Islamic law, and an emphasis on the universality of the principles could generate increased avenues of cooperation, leading to the security of persons affected by armed conflict, and finally, realizing the theoretical guarantees of protection in war," unquote. 3, protection of children in armed conflict. Children shoulder a disproportionate human cost of the armed conflicts raging today. According to reports published by Save the Children last June, quote, 468 million, or more than 1 in 6 children worldwide, live in areas affected by armed conflict. Africa remains the region with the highest total of children living in conflict zone, around 183 million, unquote. Some of the pressing protection concerns today regarding children in armed conflict include unlawful recruitment and use of children in hostilities, access to education, treatment of children deprived of their liberty, and restoration of family links. But Caroline Erlingman wrote a paper on persons with disabilities with a special focus on children under IHL and Islamic law, and draws our attention to the specific protection needed for children with disabilities in armed conflict. So I hope your paper will be useful for humanitarian workers. To conclude, it is essential that IHL is seen as truly international and globally owned, or at least not antithetical to the norms of arms carriers. Sustaining lives, alleviating suffering, and preserving even a bare minimum of humanity in armed conflict necessitates that humanitarian actors listen and learn from both those carrying weapons and those affected by armed conflict. Finally, and here comes the last part about the story behind the subtitle. The ICRC president gave a lecture last month at the International Academy of Red Cross and the Red Crescent at Zhuzhou University in China under the title, "There are 100 Steps to Peace." The first one are humanitarian. And I say now to our graduates, congratulations on taking some of the first and most important steps, humanitarian steps. Now, I hope in your next chapter, you will take us to world peace. Make the world a better place for you and for me, an entire human race. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Al-Dawoody. I see that the theme peace is coming back. And I think that at the Academy, we've started working on that also through the work conducted in the MTJ program, transitioning from war to peace, how to deal with that. So thank you very much for highlighting how respect for IHL and also human rights can help also in the transition phase. So now, let me give the opportunity to our students' representatives to speak about their experience at the Geneva Academy, what they learned, the academic and human experience with us. So we have several students' representatives. We are going to start with the ex-MAS representative, Anastasia Marchuk. I announced already the other representatives, if you don't mind. For the LLM, we will have Annika Sarah Fuchs and Magdalena Belen Rochi Monagas. And last but not least, for the MTJ, we will have Wahida Omari. So, Anastasia, you have the floor.
Dear all, thank you very much for the honor to speak on behalf of the graduating class. When we applied to the Executive Master Program at the Geneva Academy, we were promised 3 days of study per week during lunchtime. Sounds like an easy stroll, right? And a pretty impressive line in the CV. But what we got was much more than that. Sometimes these were 4 to 5 days of study per week, but also quite hardcore legal literature to read that was very new to us. Some waiting time for the marks for our exams and the papers, but much more importantly, an insight into some of the brightest minds of our age. And you know, those lectures by Professor Di Stefano, they really made me question my own intellectual levels. We were privileged to receive first-hand accounts of landmark events in the history of international law. We held challenging discussions, and we went through this experience with a fantastic cohort of the talented professionals from all over the world. What differs the executive education from all others is that it's your own mature choice to pursue it. It takes a lot of motivation and self-discipline to keep up with the lectures in parallel with all the demanding jobs that we have. We didn't have the luxury of focusing entirely on the learning, although at times it felt like the program demanded from us more than we were in position to give. We also went on with our lives. Some had a child, someone got married, got promoted, or got a new job. Some found themselves in front of the armed conflict unfolding right there and now. But one thing remained unchanged: our commitment to complete the program. Perhaps it has even increased further. When the whole world goes crazy and there are new emergencies arising here and there, isn't it reassuring to know which article of which convention exactly is being thrown into the trash this time? No, but talking seriously, one thing that has struck many of us during the study was the realization of how fragile the international law is, how imperfect it is. Some say we see too little of international law now and too much of the armed conflicts. It's all hanging there on the strings of the state's consensus and will. And as every day of the recent years has shown us, the strings are barely holding the pressure. They're thinning out. They're getting ready to tear. Now we are in the middle of the discussion on the need to perhaps review the whole architecture of the international law. And thanks to the Geneva Academy, we are well equipped to take part in that discussion. My only plea to all of us is that we use the knowledge that we gain to uphold the international law rather than the reverse. Thank you, brilliant professors and the fantastic teaching assistants of the Geneva Academy for taking us on that journey. Standing here, I want to say how proud I am of our class. We did it. We managed. Guys, we were there for each other, even for many of us, the first time we see each other personally, and there are so many of us still joining online. Using this privilege, I want to also wave at my family and thank them for being there for me and for their unwavering support and faith. I wouldn't have managed otherwise. If someone asked me if they should go for the program, and quite a few have already asked me that, I would say think carefully. It gives you more than you expect, but wants a lot in return. Those 4-hour long exams are something to remember, but the funny part is, when it's all over, next to the relief, you also feel like now there is something missing in your life. So if someone asked me whether I would have wanted to do it all over again, my answer is yes, absolutely. And yes, that line on the CV is indeed an impressive one. Congratulations, the Executive Masters of International Law in Armed Conflicts 2021-2023.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. As LLM class representatives, we were given the opportunity to reflect on this past year, including the experiences that we have all shared and the numerous lessons that we have learned. We think we all must remember, as students, the feeling of starting the LLM when we first set foot into Villa Monnier, on a sunny day when we looked around to see our new colleagues and had the first conversations filled with joy, nerves, excitement, and motivation about the new journey we were about to embark together.
Of course, besides our motivations, we all held a great amount of respect for what was to come, something that had been referred to us as the most intense academic year of our lifetime. Before we knew it, we were in the middle of the experience, and soon enough, we completed our pleadings, took our final exams, went on our study trip, and submitted our thesis this summer. It is safe to say that the speed in which the year has passed might have almost swept us off of our feet, if not for the conviction and the dedication we have faced it with. Having overcome so many academic and personal challenges the past year, it is even more gratifying to be here together this evening. Therefore, when thinking about what we as a group have learned during our year in Geneva, it would be hard to pinpoint just a few things. Most of all, what we have found was the level of support most of us, all of us, have given to each other. In our study groups, friend groups, and within the whole cohort, and the numerous group meetings, multiple message chains and group chat explosions, actually, and within the whole cohort, and the numerous, within the whole cohort, and our in-between coffee chats. Beyond sharing notes, last-minute exam advice, encouraging words, a meal or a drink in the evening, our LLM cohort stood out in its readiness to share knowledge and advice. This has been true in many ways, be it advice on restaurants or events in Geneva, insights on tackling Geneva's bureaucracy, sharing of vacancy positions, career advice, or discussing diverse professional experiences. Moreover, and we say this from our own perspective, but we believe it rings true for most of us, the small conversations between us have been truly enriching, not for only what we were able to learn, but for the little jokes, the exciting stories, and actually the humor these interactions were adding within the often daunting subjects we are studying. So while our studies were filled with interesting lectures, discussions, and very exciting projects, the highlights of the year were especially those of social connection. Firstly, we would like to recall the legendary after party at Villa Monnier following our final pleadings. I think we can all remember that. One could really sense the celebration of this success and the hard work everyone had put into this project. Even Professor Sassoli seemed to be very pleased with us, since he not only provided one, but a full amount of 18 bottles of wine. That prompted the question of why such a peculiar amount, neither 15 nor 20. We don't know yet what was the reason. But we had a lot of fun, and numerous stories were told that evening that shall not be revealed now. But what we can say is that it was a truly unforgettable one. Another remarkable experience that has been a great highlight was the study trip to Armenia. Let us say one thing. It is one thing to study together, but quite another to share a room with 15 people for a week. Our group enjoyed this time to the fullest, as we were able to learn about a new culture and topics relating to our common passion for international law, and even creating our own World Vision Song Contest. The study trips program was so rich that it can definitely compete with the fast-pacedness of the LLM program. During the 7 days we spent in Yerevan and its surroundings, we met with 11 institutions, government officials, and legal professionals with whom we discussed various issues surrounding the Armenian genocide, current human rights challenges, and the effects of the conflict with Azerbaijan. We were welcomed with open arms and even got to join the festivities at the Constitution Day, despite the harsh reality of a fatal and illegal blockade by Azerbaijan of Artsakh Armenians that has been largely overlooked by the international community, the media, and legal professionals. The main takeaway from this trip has been to stand in solidarity and also shed light on this injustice, and we hope that institutions will follow us in doing so.
During our year together, we have discussed biases when analyzing different conflict situations and the need for international institutions to overcome those to effectively contribute to justice in practice, thus gaining a strong reputation for justice beyond furthering legal expertise. Especially in our current times, seeing the recent expulsion of Armenians from the homeland, the ongoing conflicts in Sudan, Ethiopia, the massacres of thousands of civilians in Israel and Palestine, tied with the more than questionable response from the international community, it is sometimes hard to maintain faith in the international system. Just a few days ago, many of us have discussed how surreal it feels to celebrate the achievement of this LLM while we continue to see massive violations of IHL and international crimes being committed as we speak. With those thoughts in mind, rather than advice, we would like to leave you, future humanitarians and human rights professionals, with some words of encouragement. As your classmates and friends, it has been a true joy and honor to share this year with you. This group's undescribable passion, grit, proactiveness, courage, and overall strength of convictions have been evident through and through. As a group, we have shown to stand in solidarity with each other as a student body, and beyond that, with those affected by human rights violations and affected also by armed conflicts. We have no doubts that regardless of the adversities, you will continue to do great work in the future, showing up for people in vulnerable situations whose rights must be respected and protected. Thus, we know that beyond personal, professional achievements, you will go on to strengthen the reputation for justice of the institutions you will be a part of. We look forward to seeing your work in promoting and reviving international law, fighting biases, and in strengthening our tools, organizations, and institutions. Having gotten to know all of you, we are more than confident in our future. Finally, we would like to thank our professors, the Geneva Academy, teaching assistants over there, for this truly unique and amazing year. I'm sorry, also the student office. Lotte, I don't know where you are. And importantly, we also want to thank the class's friends and family for supporting us through the year and being here today with us. Most of all, we want to thank the LLM class for sharing this year that has been truly amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because I speak very low. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed professors and faculty members, proud parents, and the incredible fellow graduates. I have the honor and privilege to address you tonight for the very last time. This evening is filled with joy, pride, and perhaps a few tears. We have gathered here not only to mark the end of a chapter, but also to celebrate the beginning of a new and exciting journey. Graduation is not just about receiving a diploma, it's also about embracing the endless opportunities that lie ahead, also the challenges. So be ready for that. And as we look back on the year we spent together, we cannot help but to be overwhelmed by the memories we have created together and the friendship we have forged. We have endured late nights studying, challenging exams. You know what I mean, which exams? And occasional setbacks. But through it all, we have grown stronger, wiser, and more resilient. So, this evening is a milestone that signifies our hard work and dedication. It's a testament to our commitment to learning, self-improvement, and personal growth. Each one of us has faced our unique challenges, and we have overcome them with determination and resilience. So this evening, we stand here as a testament to our own strength and the unwavering support of our friends, families, and professors. So let us take a moment and acknowledge that sacrifices that made by our parents, our siblings, and our loved ones. They have been our pillar of strength throughout this journey, providing us with guidance, love, and support. And without their sacrifices and encouragement, we would not be here today. So please acknowledge that, ladies and gentlemen. And for those of us who have been offered a scholarship, I want to take this opportunity and thank the generous support that we have been provided with, especially those of us coming from the developing countries. I have been offered this scholarship, an opportunity in a moment that in my country, Afghanistan, girls are not allowed to go beyond 6th grade of school, or women are completely banned from having access to education and work. So I always remain grateful for this opportunity. Dear fellow graduates, as we embrace the future with open hearts and open minds, and we step into the next step of our lives, we must remember that the phase ahead will be filled with challenges and uncertainties. However, it is these challenges that will shape us into the individual we aspire to be. Remember that every setback is an opportunity for a comeback, and every failure is a stepping stone towards success. And we all know that in every corner of the world, there are cries that go unheard, rights that are trampled upon, and justice that remains elusive. The knowledge we acquire here is not just academic, but also a torchlight in the darkness for those who have lost their ways and those who have forgotten by their societies. But we must remember that the knowledge alone is not enough. Sometimes, when the system challenges our beliefs, it is our courage that defines us. The courage to speak when voices are silenced, the courage to stand with others when they are brought to their knees, and the courage to change the course when history threatens to repeat its errors. So to my fellow graduates there, I challenge you. I challenge you to be the beacon of hope in the face of despair, to be the voice of reason in cacophony of prejudice, and above all, be the agent of change in the world that desperately needs it. Congratulations to each and every one of you. And in the last, I want to allow me to also wish you all the best in my own native tongue. So, ما براتان موفقیت بسیار زیاد آرزو میکنم. تشکر بسیار زیاد. دیرم مننه. Thank you very much.
Thank you to our students' representatives for the beautiful speeches. This is your evening, and it is so beautiful to hear your views, the challenges you met, and also the highlights of the year. Now comes one of the crucial moments of the ceremony, which is the award of the Henri Dunant Prize. So to that effect, I warmly welcome Mr. François Bugnon, board member of the Henri Dunant Prize Foundation, a prolific author on international humanitarian law and the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement, and also former member of the ICRC Assembly. So Mr. Bugnon will give the laudatio, and he will also announce the 2023 Henri Dunant Prize recipients. Mr. Bugnon, you have the floor.
I must confess it's not so easy to speak after Mrs. Wahida Omani. But nevertheless, dear Professor Gaggioli, distinguished professors, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we are all overwhelmed by the horrendous images of the war in Ukraine, in Nagorno-Karabakh, and now in Israel and Gaza. Not to forget the long-lasting conflicts or other situations of violence in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, in Yemen, in Sudan, Ethiopia, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Kashmir, Libya, Sahel, and many other places. We are all overwhelmed by those images of death, destruction, and unbearable suffering. At the same time, we admire the courage and dedication of Red Cross and Red Crescent, or in the case of Israel, Red Shield of David volunteers, who endeavor to assist the wounded and the civilian victims of those conflicts, often in the most dangerous places and sometimes in the midst of fighting, or volunteers of others, humanitarian organizations. Somehow, all those volunteers are the spiritual sons and daughters of Henri Dunant, even if many of them are not aware of it, even if many of them have no idea who was Henri Dunant. Here in this room, all of you know that Henri Dunant was not only the founder of the Red Cross, but also the main promoter of the original Geneva Convention of 22nd August 1864, which is the starting point of contemporary international humanitarian law. All of us have, therefore, a great debt to his memory. However, for many years, the life and achievements of Henri Dunant were actually little known. In 1975, my old friend, Roger Durand, created the Henri Dunant Society in Geneva in order to stimulate historical research on the life and achievements of Henri Dunant. In half of a century of intensive work, this society organized conferences, published a number of books and articles based on original research in first-hand documents, which allow a better knowledge of the life, personality, and, most important, achievements of Henri Dunant. At the initiative of one of its very active members, Mrs. Pierrette Mourgedalgue, the Society created in 2004 a foundation with the objective of stimulating historical and legal research in international humanitarian law or in the other fields of activity of Henri Dunant by rewarding outstanding papers on humanitarian law or other aspects of the spiritual heritage of Henri Dunant. Mrs. Mourgedalgue also made a very generous donation which constitute the initial capital of the foundation. The Henri Dunant Prize for Research has been awarded every year since 2005 in partnership with the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights. In practice, the Academy makes a preliminary selection of the LLM papers submitted in the current years in order to identify Among the memoirs that respond to the objectives and criteria of the Henry Dunant Prize, the best papers in academic terms. The papers thus selected are then submitted to a jury made up of 1 or 2 professors of the Academy, 1 representative of the International Committee of the Red Cross, and 2 or 3 members of the Board of Trustees of the Henry Dunant Prize Foundation. This year, the members of the jury received 3 LLM papers selected by the professors of the Academy. And I would like to avail myself of this opportunity to express gratitude for the work done by the professors of the Academy who made this preliminary selection. Actually, the task of the jury this year proved particularly difficult because we were confronted with 2 outstanding papers of real first-class quality, but in very different domains and based on different approaches and different methodologies, which make comparisons extremely difficult. After a long deliberation and keeping in mind the criteria stated in the charter of the Foundation, the members of the jury, guided by a concern of equity, unanimously decided to award the 2023 Henry Dunant Prize for Research ex aequo to Mrs. Rodanti Violacchi. Mrs. Rodanti Violacchi for her memoir, The Erosion of the Right to Asylum in Europe, Strategic Litigation for Victims of Harmful Practices before the European Court of Human Rights in their pursuit of asylum. And to Mr. Edward Mazziwo, for Mr. Mazziwo for his memoir, Advancing Honor and Dignity in Death for Victims of Armed Conflicts, exploring the challenges and opportunities of artificial intelligence and machine learning in humanitarian forensic action under international humanitarian law. Concerning Mrs. Violacchi's paper, the members of the jury were impressed by the extent of her research into the jurisprudence of the European Court of Human Rights, by the number of decisions, more than 80, which she analyzed, actually all decisions referring to the right to asylum, and above all by the remarkable synthesis she made of those numerous decisions. The members of the jury were also impressed by Mrs. Violacchi's objectives. Besides the academic objective, she decided to chart, in the light of the jurisprudence of the court, a strategy in order to successfully defend the rights of asylum seekers and ultimately to defend the right of asylum, which is today threatened by populist movements and national egoism throughout Europe. There is no question that this paper is fully consonant with one of the big concerns of Henry Dunant, namely the fight against all forms of persecutions. Concerning Mr. Mazziwo's paper, the jury was impressed by the choice of a subject which combines tradition with modernity, a century-old concern on the one hand, and the question of the burning actuality on the other. The jury was also impressed by Mr. Mazziwo's interdisciplinary approach, combining international humanitarian law, human rights law, and modern technologies. The jury noted that Mr. Mazziwo did not only explore the potentialities of the new technologies, such as artificial intelligence and machine learning, in the field of research for missing persons and identification of mortal remains, but also the risk inherent in the use of such technologies. Finally, Mr. Maziwo made proposals for normative and operational developments so as to maximize the potentialities and minimize the risk inherent in the use of such technologies. Last but not least, the members of the jury noted that the object of Mr. Maziwo's paper goes much further than the respect due to the dead. Actually, the paramount objective is the protection of the dignity of the human being in life and after death, as well as the right of families to know the fate of their beloved ones. This paper is also fully consonant with Henry Dunant's main commitment, namely the protection of our victims and the mitigation of their suffering. Dear Mrs. Violacchi, dear Mr. Maziwo, I know he's not in his room, but maybe he's following the meeting online. I am pleased to convey to you the warmest congratulations of the jury and of the Board of Trustees of the Henry Dunant Prize Foundation. Thank you. What's going on? So, may I ask Mrs. Violacchi to join us? Voilà. Alors, félicitations. Voilà, bravo madame. Félicitations.
I'm very emotional. Honorable members of the Dunant Foundation, dear professors, fellow students, family and friends. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the members of the jury of Henri Dunant for awarding my research with the Henri Dunant Prize. I'm beyond proud and honored that the Foundation recognized the affiliation of my paper to the spread and renewal of the ideas and achievements of Henri Dunant. Your acknowledgement inspires me to continue my long-standing dedication to the concrete protection of the rights of refugees in the pursuit of asylum. Thank you. I would also like to thank my supervisor, Professor Vincent Chetal. Your valuable guidance and input had a positive impact in my drafting process of my paper. To my classmates, your ideals are a constant reminder of the duties we must comply with every day and the great responsibilities we must live up. Before diving into the substance of my paper, I would like, first of all, to express my solidarity with people who become refugees within a night, fleeing war crimes and crimes against humanity, and most probably will not receive the protection they are afforded to, as the case of the European Court of Human Rights proves. In the words of Hannah Arendt, whilst international humanitarian law has a cosmopolitan premise and promise, it does not entirely acknowledge an unequal, fair, and unqualified right to have rights for every person. This is the reality unfolding under the common European asylum system and reaffirmed the case of the European Court for everyone seeking asylum in Europe. Grasping this reality, on the one side, the proven lack of compliance of contracting parties to their human rights obligations under the European Convention of Human Rights, and on the other hand, my field experience witnessing the scarcity of legal aid available to victims of harmful practice to defend themselves. The paper tackles this lacuna by drafting legal guidance for strategic litigation before the European Court of Human Rights, directly addressing and guiding asylum seekers on how they should develop their cases before the court. I deliberately chose to proceed with Article 3 on the prohibition of torture, inhumane and degraded treatment, and Article 5 on the right to liberty and security for purposes of practical relevance since they are violated the most frequently. That was my inspiration for my paper, to hold European states accountable protect the right to asylum, especially today, when displacement has reached an unprecedented level, and support victims' effort towards justice by facilitating the judicial proceedings before the court. Irrespective of the court's success in promoting and protecting human rights, there are some groundbreaking decisions, such as the huge amount of the extraterritorial application of the Convention for Migrants in Distress, or the MSS case on the violation of human dignity due to the inhumane living conditions that have altered substantially the migration landscape in Europe. The today's reality obliges us at least to try, and that was my paper, an effort to try for justice. In the first part of my legal analysis, I break down all the procedural and substantive obligation incumbent on national authorities under Article 3 and Article 5 towards asylum seekers and the main areas where states fail to comply. As a way of example, for the thousands of asylum seekers finding themselves at a risk of irreversible harm due to unlawful expulsions or forced removals in the Mediterranean Sea or the Balkan migration route, the paper established affiliation between the principle of non-refoulement, the right to access asylum proceedings under Article 3, and the obligation of states to examine with due diligence allegations of ill treatment. The second part of my paper constitutes the core of my analysis, where I provide legal suggestions depending on the profile of each applicant on how it's advisable to develop the case and approach the court. A concrete example of Article 3 is the case of pregnant women placed in inadequate living conditions, such as transit zoned at the borders between Hungary and Serbia, a practice that exposed them and their unborn children to irreversible harm. In view of Article 5, and with regard to the thousands of asylum seekers finding themselves in administrative detention, the paper adopts a solutions-oriented approach to challenge the legality of detention. For example, this part of my paper is dedicated to victims of prolonged detention, awaiting deportation, a limbo that is sustained by the EU-Turkey deal of 2016, without a reasonable prospect of removal for those thousands of asylum seekers in detention. And of course, to minor children, who belong to the most vulnerable population of our society due to the migration status and young age. Henri Dunant's humanitarian aspirations are needed more than ever today. My paper adheres to his ideas by fighting for the human dignity of asylum seekers, who by seeking a dignified life in Europe, fell victims of Europe's policy non-attrait. I thank you, all of you.
Congratulations, Rodanti. Now we have also video from Edward Matsuiwa, who could not be with us tonight.
Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. Invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, fellow graduates, good evening. I am deeply honored today to stand before you as one of the recipients of the prestigious Henri Dunant Research Prize for 2023. This award is not just a recognition of my efforts, but a testament to the collective endeavor to advance our understanding of the most pressing issues affecting humanity during armed conflicts. First and foremost, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Henri Dunant Foundation and the Geneva Academy for recognizing my effort and presenting me with this incredible honor. My research, titled Advancing Honor and Dignity in Death for Victims of Armed Conflict, exploring the challenges and opportunities of artificial intelligence and machine learning in humanitarian forensic action under international humanitarian law, addressed a critical humanitarian concern that warrants our utmost attention. In choosing this topic, I was driven by a deep sense of responsibility to address the plight of those who suffer in the shadows of war, a deep-rooted conviction that even in the chaos of armed conflict, human dignity and humanity should remain our guiding lights. It was born from a desire to contribute to a discourse that transcends the brutality of war and acknowledges the intrinsic worth of every human life. The heart of my research lies in leveraging the power of artificial intelligence and machine learning as a strategic response to the complexities and challenges faced in humanitarian forensic action. These technologies, when ethically and effectively applied, hold the potential to enhance accuracy, efficiency, provide closure to the families of the deceased. It was an exploration of the synergies between technology and human compassion, envisioning a world where these two seamlessly coexist. The journey was both enlightening and challenging, engaging with the complexities of international humanitarian law, forensic science, and the ethical implications of utilizing advanced technologies was both stimulating and thought-provoking. As I navigated this academic landscape, I encountered enlightening perspectives, insightful debates, and the collective wisdom of scholars and practitioners in the field. It pushed me to reevaluate preconceived notions and refine my understanding of the subject matter. Writing my paper was a labor of love and dedication. It was about renewing and furthering the ideals of humanitarianism, advocating for a future where advancement in technology converge with humanitarian efforts in the same way that Henry Dunant would have possibly done had he been with us here today. The goal was to inspire change, to encourage a shift in how we approach humanitarian efforts, and to provoke thought and action in this critical sphere. The hope was to shed light on how we can elevate the standards of care and respect for the fallen despite the grim circumstances surrounding their demise. Ladies and gentlemen, as I stand before you today, I envision a future where my research isn't just confined to the pages of a journal, gathering dust on library shelves, but a dynamic force and catalyst for positive change. A future where the application of technology is thoughtfully integrated into humanitarian efforts, upholding the honor and dignity of those affected, even in the face of the gravest challenges. In closing, I am eternally grateful to the Hans Wüsthof Foundation for granting me a full scholarship to pursue my studies at the Geneva Academy, without which I would not have been here today. I am forever indebted to my supervisor, Professor Gagioli. Her constructive guidance through her invaluable comments, criticism, and driving me in the right direction made this work possible. I also want to extend special thanks to the ICRC Pretoria and Nairobi delegations, particularly Vaughan, Lucinda, Stephen, and Bilal, for sharing their experiences and insights from a practical perspective, which helped me to appreciate the important work that forensic practitioners and legal advisors play in humanitarian forensic action. Once again, thank you from the depths of my heart for this distinguished and esteemed recognition, which fuels my commitment to advancing the cause of human dignity even in the darkest hours of human history. As Henry Dunant once said, everyone in one way or another, and according to their strength, contributes to some extent to this good work. Ladies and gentlemen, let us collectively join our hands together and leverage our collective strength to advocate for human dignity, peace, and justice. It is through our actions, both big and small, that we can truly honor the legacy of Henry Dunant. Cheers to a progress and a future that's as dazzling as this moment, and to the furtherance of the commitment and ideals of Henry Dunant. I thank you.
So congratulations again to our ex aequo winners of the Henry Dunant Prize. It's beautiful to hear you and to listen to your vision for the future. It gives us really hope. I would like also to thank the Henry Dunant Foundation for our partnership, which is very, very important to the Geneva Academy. We are very grateful that the foundation also accepted to afford 2 prizes this year, so this is quite exceptional. Thank you for that. And thank you for your generosity. I'm happy to recall also that the Henry Dunant Prize's winning articles will be considered by the International Review of the Red Cross for publication. I would like to thank the editor-in-chief of the International Review of the Red Cross, Mr. Bruno de Meyer, and Ms. Gillian Rafferty, the managing editor, for this fantastic opportunity. So now, in addition to the Henry Dunant Prize, the Geneva Academy attributes prizes for the best LLM MTJ, and as of this year, for the best XMAS paper as well. So I would like to thank the members of the selection committee who read 8 LLM papers, 9 MTJ papers, and 6 ex-mass theses. So the members of the committee are, in alphabetical order, Professor Giovanni Di Stefano, who is with us, Professor Sévan Garibian, Dr. Sandra Kremen, who I see over there, Dr. Clotilde Pégorier, and myself. So now let me announce the recipients. So the best ex-mass paper is authored by Catherine Sixt, and she wrote on the evolution of the normative legal order of the scientific community and its relationship to research and development of means of warfare. So Ms. Sixt, you can join me.
Thank you to the committee for this award. I truly appreciate it. Thank you to our professors for teaching us and giving us this opportunity to learn. Thank you to my advisor, Professor Di Stefano, for his unwavering guidance and also helping me to learn some more French and some more Italian, both. So appreciate that. And thank you to my dear colleagues. I would actually like to take this opportunity as a girl who was able to pursue her dreams and as an opportunity to get this education, to ask my classmate, Fadwa, to come up as a girl who also was able to pursue her dreams in getting this education, but she came from a very different background than I did. And so I would like Fadwa to speak on my behalf with this. So thank you very much for this award, and Fadwa, thank you very much for speaking.
She didn't give me enough time to prepare, but as law speaks to our minds, I want to speak to your hearts. I'm a survivor of war, and as we are gathering today to celebrate our success, I am here today and every day celebrating being alive. Dear professors, ladies and gentlemen, guests and fellow graduates, today, as I stand before you, I cannot help but reflect on the profound impact that armed conflicts have had on my life. Born and raised in a region prone to armed conflicts, I have witnessed firsthand the devastating consequences of those conflicts on innocent civilians, especially women and children. It is with a heavy heart and determined spirit that I am here today to share my thoughts with you on this occasion. During chaos and distractions, where violence engulfs every aspect of daily life, it is fundamental to recall that civilians must be always protected. The victims are not faceless statistics. They have faces, they have names, and I could be one of those numbers. I could be just a figure. I am talking to your hearts before your minds. We are real people, individuals, just like me here in front of you. We harbor dreams, aspiration, and a will to survive. Civilians suffer mostly at the hands of armed conflicts, often becoming victims for indiscriminate attacks, displacements, and untold suffering. Today, I decide not to be a victim. I decided to be a survivor who would tell those stories. We must unite in our commitment to upholding international humanitarian law, ensuring that the principles of proportionality, distinction, and precaution are respected at all times. Only then can we prevent further human devastation and work towards a more peaceful future. It is our moral obligation to safeguard the rights to safety, security, and dignity. In wars, it is crucial to cast a focused spotlight on one group that endures particular hardship: girls. Ladies and gentlemen, as a Palestinian woman, education has always been a beacon of hope for me and my peers. Throughout history, education has proven to be an unstoppable force, empowering individuals to overcome adversity, break down barriers, and transform societies. However, in conflict zones, girls are often denied access to education and are deprived of their fundamental right to learn, grow, and shape their own destinies. By denying girls an education, we deny ourselves incredible potential of future leaders, peace builders, and agents of change. We must champion efforts that not only protect girls from harm, but also create environments where they can thrive, learn, grow, and contribute to their communities. By investing in girls' educations, we invest in stronger societies, more resilient communities, and a more equitable and peaceful world. Education is not just a means for knowledge, but also a powerful tool for breaking cycles of violence and discrimination. As we move forward as graduates, ready to embark on our respective journeys, let us never forget the faces of those affected by armed conflict. They're not numbers, they have names. Let their struggle fuel our determination to build a world where civilians are shielded from harm and where every girl, regardless of her circumstances, has access to education. Together, with a renewed sense of purpose, let us be the advocates of change. Let us be together to draw a future where every individual in every corner of the world can live in peace and pursue their dreams. Thank you very much.
Surprises and emotions gather us tonight. So let me turn now to the best LLM paper. It is afforded to Belén Guerrero Romero for the interparty. For her thesis on interparty sexual and reproductive violence within non-state armed groups, questioning the meaning of the requirement any civilian population in the definition of crimes against humanity.
Ladies, gentlemen, and gender non-conforming people in the room and watching us online, forgive me if I'm a bit emotional, because the last discourse was very emotional. Thank you for that. I first and foremost want to thank and express my sincerest gratitude to the selection committee and to the Geneva Academy for honoring me with this award. I am very, very grateful, and I also want to thank Professor Damian Scaglia, my supervisor, for his unwavering support during this process. Also to La Caixa Foundation for having sponsored my studies here at the Geneva Academy. To my classmates for the beautiful network of support we've built over these months. To my family, who cannot be here but are watching me online, for instilling in me the value of education and hard work. And last but not least, to Alvaro, my greatest support over the highs and lows of this very intense year. And on this very intense year, I think that many of us might share the feeling, after having finished the exams, completely drained, that at last the easy part of the masters was coming, the paper. Personally, I was wrong. It was very tough. As many of my colleagues will relate, writing a thesis, an XMAX, LLM, or master's MTJ thesis, while interning or working full-time is not an easy task. But I managed, we all managed, and now it's all over, and we're here very happily harvesting the fruits of the very hard labor of the last year. So congratulations on everyone for having made it and for graduating today. And now I also want to very briefly share some insights on my paper. I selected this topic partly stricken by the fact that in Colombia, the FARC, the Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia, could conduct more than 1,000 forced abortions within their own ranks every year. This violence, intra-party sexual and reproductive violence within non-state armed groups, was for a very long time not considered to be criminalized under international law, thus effectively depriving survivors from accessing justice and from accessing justice based on their membership to a non-state armed groups, which, ironically, in most cases, was not even voluntary. Some years ago, this changed when the International Criminal Court considered in a very similar case in the Democratic Republic of Congo that this kind of violence could amount to war crimes, although, as we learned in international criminal law courses, this has not been an uncontroversial move. Thus, I tried with my paper to add to this debate by trying to frame this violence as crimes against humanity. Thus, I tried to argue for a flexible interpretation of the requirement that crimes against humanity must be committed as part of an attack directed against a civilian population. The framework I propose enhances the prospects of justice and accountability for survivors and enhances a more comprehensive acknowledgement of their experiences. In a nutshell, my paper tried to foster an interpretation of the law beyond mere legalistic and formalistic rigid terms in order to achieve a fair outcome, which is justice. And I think that this is, to some extent, our duties as now international lawyers and transitional justice experts. In the midst of horrible humanitarian catastrophes across the Middle East, Ukraine, Sudan, the Caucasus, Myanmar, Ethiopia, and unfortunately many other conflicts in the world, we must be creative at the time of interpreting and applying the law in order to always serve the purposes of justice, peace, and accountability. Let's never forget that. Congratulations and thank you very much.
Now the best MTJ paper. So here we were faced with the same dilemma as when we were discussing in the Henri Dunant prize committee. We were faced with different theses and two excellent ones with very different methodologies, very different approaches. So here again, we decided to afford the best MTJ paper, ex aequo, to Tong Li, who wrote about abusing transitional justice, reflection on the holistic approach of transitional justice. And we also attributed the MTJ paper to Alice Langton, for her thesis on conceptualizing structural violence and colonialism as point of rupture in transitional justice, the case of Australia. Congratulations to both of you.
Normally it's Tom going first.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So I will begin my speech with a story. So a couple of days ago, a friend of mine back home sent me a message saying, Tom, you learn international law, and there's something very terrible happening in the Middle East. You got to do something about it. I mean, I don't want to tell him that I'm a mere student and there's not like limited things I can do. And I definitely wouldn't tell him that, I learned transitional justice. We only care about justice after a conflict. I definitely won't tell them that. But I mean, those things sounds like excuses, and they're actually excuses. Actually, I feel the same heartbreak as he do, not because I'm an international law student, but because I'm a human. But as an international law student and someone who has been studying transitional justice, I also have this belief that what I'm learning or studying or doing right now, which means transitional justice, human rights law, and at IHL, could make a difference and could make the world a better place. But are we really making the world a better place? That's actually what my thesis is mainly about. My MTJ paper is built on a very simple topic or a very simple idea that transitional justice is now being too popular. And by being too popular, people are mentioning it and using it everywhere. But the questions of what is transitional justice is getting less and less attention. So in my paper, I'm actually arguing that if states are using transitional justice without a holistic approach and not in a good faith, state would actually be abusing transitional justice. Of course, there are discussions of different type of using transitional justice without a holistic approach. There are discussions about good faith, about intentions of the states. I won't bore you with those discussions in the graduations. But my paper is simply want to draw more attention on the holistic approach of transitional justice, which has been brought out in the first place when the idea of transitional justice has been brought out by Poplar de Greve and other good scholars. And I want to bring us back to the original stage, to when people started to discuss what is transitional justice and to discuss about the normative concept. And also, I want to, in my paper, one of the main objectives is to ask more questions. Some of you know me, know I love to ask questions. And including I ask questions of, is states really the only one to blame for abusing transitional justice? Is transitional justice also expanding and developing too fast? So that's my paper is about. But my fear is, if transitional justice is keep being used as a fancy concept or as a handy tool, or just as something to gain international legitimacy, then we are not going to help anyone with transitional justice, and we are actually destroying the reputation or people's faith in transitional justice. When I was writing my paper, I also realized that my paper is also reflecting our whole years of study. For me personally, I have zero experience of working or living in a transitional settings, but thanks to our good professors at the Geneva Academy, and thanks to my colleague, thanks to my classmate, who is always wanting to share their own personal experience and their own personal thoughts, I am able to discuss the practice of transitional justice and also to question the concept of transitional justice. But also I realized throughout our years of study, something worth more attention, which is the holistic approach of transitional justice. That's why I choose to write this paper, and that's what I've been mainly discussing in my paper. I mean, transitional justice is becoming popular, which is not that bad, especially for us since it means more job opportunities. But transitional justice is also becoming too popular, and people are using it, discussing it simply because it is popular. That's actually not that good. And you know what? For us, if we do not pay enough attention to the holistic approach of transitional justice, we are actually going to be one of them, which is, as my classmate would say, unlucky. So to conclude, I want to thank my supervisors, Professor Savan Garibian, and also want to thank my family, 尤其是我的母亲, which means in Mandarin, especially my mother. And I also want to thank all the teachers, professors, staff, and also guest lecturers at the Geneva Academy, and also our dearest teaching assistants, which I see some of them are sitting here. And yeah, and also I want to thank my classmates. You made me learn so much in this year, and also more importantly, you are my family here in Geneva. And also, one last people to thank, I see sitting right here, is Etienne, who is my supervisor at the internship program at the Geneva Academy. So just to conclude, one last sentence. Thank you, everyone, for supporting me. And let's hope with transitional justice and with this holistic approach, of course, we can make this world a better place. Thank you.
Good evening, friends, colleagues, family, and the Geneva Academy community. I would like to start by properly congratulating the graduates in the room today. It has been a privilege seeing the pride on all of your faces, and those who are here joining them this evening, the loved ones that stand beside you. The sense of accomplishment that we all feel, mixed with no measure of relief, paired with no small measure of uncertainty of what's to come, I'm sure is what's filled the room today. But no doubt there exists an impressive pool of scholars in the room and online joining us today who are able to make a better contribution this evening than I can. But I hope, however, that you are able to find something of interest in my modest address this evening. The purpose of my thesis was twofold. Firstly, to center First Nations voices in the exploration of bottom-up, victim-led approaches to truth-telling, to justice, and to accountability in Australia. And secondly, to position a transformative praxis of transitional justice to address colonialism and structural violence through the exploration of First Nations ways of knowing. I would like to acknowledge all First Nations participants of this paper for their generosity of knowledge, for their stories, for their heart, for their commitment to a more equal and just world. Thank you for the privilege of trusting me with your stories and your vulnerability. Thank you also for the permission to continue to make mistakes along the way, and there have been many, and thank you for holding me responsible to learn from them. My fellow transitional justice friends and peers are also worthy and deserving of attention this evening. I'm proud to be included in this tireless, committed, and dedicated group of alumni. And finally, no matter how old I get, my mum and dad continue to invest in my future. Thank you for unconditionally celebrating my passions and teaching me the art of life with endless love, patience, and blind devotion. I hope that you will indulge me in sharing with you some reflections that I've been having and wrestling with in these last few weeks, and especially in recent political developments in Australia over the last week. I can't help but be receiving this award with a certain sense of dissonance, holding a space for humility and ownership and pride for this work that I have been able to complete. But of course, the success is not my own, it's been with the team behind me. But also having to navigate a complex sense of grief for First Nations back home in Australia. Back home, Australian Indigenous leaders are currently sitting in a week of silence after a referendum to recognise First Nations in Australia's constitution was denied and rejected by the public. Thus, it feels inappropriate for me to be the spokesperson today to tell you more details about my thesis as a non-Indigenous person, and I stand in solidarity with First Nations leaders back home. However, I thought it would be appropriate in any case to share some lessons of leadership that I've learned from First Nations leaders, particularly leadership in the face of injustice. And as we know, as we've learned from our course, it's better to pose the question rather than give the answers anyway. So I want us to give us all a chance to imagine a new generation of leadership in our chosen pathways today. I ask all of us to imagine to keep a steadfast curiosity, to remain bold in our ideas, to continue to learn for the sake of learning beyond the diploma that we will all hold in our hands today. I also ask us to be brave, to act with courage, to be daring, to lead with love, to lean into your vulnerability, to protect your sensitivity, to learn when to pass the baton, to learn when to shut up and to give the mic, and to have courage to admit when we are wrong, and the humility to know, to own those mistakes, and to responsibility to learn from them. These are just a few of the lessons I've gained from working alongside First Nations leaders throughout the process of this research and this master's paper. There's one thing that I am certain of, and what I've learned from my colleagues today, from our professors in the room, and from leaders of First Nations communities, and that is, even if that you are not a teacher, teach. For those who are graduating today, don't take your education for granted. Share your ideas, have the courage to think differently, lean into what makes you uncomfortable, and let's all move the masses together. Thank you.
Congratulations again. We learned so much, the members of the committee reading your thesis, so it was a wonderful journey. Thank you for that. So now we are reaching the culmination point of this ceremony, because it's the actual graduation. So I will be supported by my dear colleagues in this endeavor. So Maude Bonnet, our executive director, and Clotilde Pégorier, our head of education. So Clotilde is going to call your names, and then you can go to Maude, who will be giving you your diploma. Then we can shake hands, and then you can join Clotilde. So let's start.
Dear students, esteemed faculty members, teaching assistants, colleagues, dear guests, I have the honor and the pleasure of reading the names of our Executive Master, LLM and MTJ 2023 graduates. I feel I might have one of the best roles tonight, being able to call our graduates who are present here tonight into the stage to receive their diplomas. I have also the honors of congratulating and calling the graduates who could not join us here tonight but who are present online. So, without further ado, let's start the 2023 graduation ceremony, beginning with our Executive Master in International Law in Armed Conflict. Graduating, but not present tonight and joining us online, Sarah Tamin Abawi. Fadwa K.H. Abedraou. Fadwa K.H. Abedrabou. Gumral Aslanova. Joining us online, Aisha Bouslama. Tui von Brunemer. Sener Dialan. Joining us online, Joël Began. Turkane Ijaj. Emre Kochit. Joining us online, Tess Lawrence Levine. Bishnu Mahat. Tayani Mendis. Thierry Mugisho Bayandi. Joining us online, Safa Mseli. Andres Rodriguez Soro. Greta Saracino. Sofia Siopoulou. Joining us online, Rebecca Souley Bello. Andrea Zamfretta. No. Graduating cum laude, joining us online, Igor da Silva Barbosa. Joining us online, Simona Chervi, Caroline Howard, c'est bon? Joining us online, Tae-Young Kim, Fernanda Lettenrer. Joining us online, Lisa Marreiner, Anastasia Marchuk, Ibrahim Abdou Mohamed, Areva Paranjana, Rimeno Sarsiada Pila, joining us online, Mukwada Sfala Samarai. Still joining us online, Adrian George Thrasmore Schofield. Joining us online, Kamran Seyfulyalev. Joining us online, Mohanad Adnan Musa Sadat. Still joining us online, Ifrozini Tua. Graduating cum laude, Cristina Azalero. Daniel Batliner, Roxana Marina Cortina Mendoza, Sumer Goul, joining us online, Mona Köhler-Schindler. Still joining us online, Carlos Alberto Morazzani Morgado. Still online, Rafael Eliaou Ruben, Lou Salomé Sorlin. Joining us online, Anna Cisco Terva Artiala. Graduating summa cum laude and joining us online, Giuliana Cordoso Benedetti, Matteo Domingo, Rima Ottman, Catherine Sixt, and joining us online, Amelia Williams. So congratulations to all our graduates. It is so nice to see so many of you. It's wonderful. We're now going to take a group picture, so I assume you might just have to scooch a tiny bit because we want to, commemorate this, this moment with our 2021-2023 graduates. Thank you very much and congratulations. It is now time, once the stage is cleared, to welcome and congratulate our graduate from the LLM in International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights. For the LLM in International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights, so joining us online, Galina Avdar Kolodzinskaya, Samira Shadi, graduating cum laude and joining us online, Marielle Al-Ayek, Sarah Maria Astralager Sediel, joining us online, Ana Carla da Silva Gonçalves, Pedro de Castro Souza, Joining us online, Caroline Eller-Ringman. Joining us online, Kaylee Omstad. Claudia Langianese. Joining us online, Edward Madziwa. Olivia Joroge. Sylvia Urizi. Graduating magna cum laude, Yanis Banyos. Daniela Boroquez Murcia. Joining us online, Maya Butler. Daryl Chan. Joining us online, Andrew Feinstein. Annika Fuchs. Benjamin Greenacre. Miriam Unfeld. Igor Mirzakanyan. Magdalena Belém Rochi Monagas. Chiara Saranwala. Joining us online, Emma Sitland. Antonia van Malsen. Yannick Zerbe. Graduating summa cum laude, Keda Janala. Belém Guerrero Romero. Christina Hon. Heidi Candiel. Gina Manita. And Rodanti Violaki. Congratulations to all of you again, and let's take a group photo. You can go in the middle and you will have to. Congratulations to all of you. And last but certainly not least, we welcome and we're going to congratulate our MTJ graduates. I would like to start with Elena Jenny Claudine Kahn. Joining us online for Motsamai. Josefina James Tower Said. Joining us online, Sumitra Selatambai. Graduating cum laude, Mohamed Amin Hamoud Ali Ahmed. Joining us online, Alexander Bekmutzin. Joining us online, Saba Chitizdwe. Océane Emma Fry. Arbenita Imeri. Janet Ishimwe. Alice Langton. Join us online, Tiwonge Torera Loga. Join us online, Brenda Nani Yunja. Waida Omari. Purnavi Ravindra. Alexa Rogers. Menatala Medwat Wadsbat Sahed. Morina Singh. Nardeke Tadzigali. Join us online, Nicolas Ryan Turco. Graduating magna cum laude, Naomi Disha Almeida. Catherine Suzanne Borelli. Join us online, Eva Shemaya Eza. Beatrice Meretti. Argentina Concepcion Narera Alfaro. Join us online, Francis Opio. Ivy Ron Gakwayan Quinto. Yukti Saumaya. Graduating summa cum laude, me Estenote Balena. Tanya Bulakovsky. Tongli. I cannot see who I am. Anamika Pillai. Jimmy Namdol Sherpa. Robin Samuel van der Lucht. And Superer Bezarat. And it is now time for your group pictures. If you just want to. You have to be a bit more because the angle is not. Thank you very much. No, and this was the last group photo and this marks the end of the graduation part of the ceremony. I would like to congratulate all our graduates one more time. Congratulations. Congratulations on all your amazing achievements. And now, welcome. You are part of our wonderful Geneva Academy alumni community, and now we are very happy to welcome you all. I will now hand the floor back to Professor Gajoli, who will conclude this 2023 graduation ceremony.
This is indeed the end of this ceremony, and I would like to seize this opportunity to warmly thank our faculty, made of professors of our parent institutions and external experts for sharing their knowledge and passion with our students. I'd like to thank also our donors, especially for the 26 scholarships our students benefited from and who guarantee the diversity of our student body, as we can see. I would like to thank our multiple partners, including all the organizations and institutions we collaborated with in relation to the internship program. I would like to thank my dear colleagues, Maud Bonnet, Executive Director, the Education Unit, with Clotilde Pégorier, Gregory Page, Alina Kondratiuk, Lotte Wallstra, Anna Kilibarda. I would like also to thank our communication and events team, Nathalie Mivlas Tirabosco, Romain Alamand, Tim Young, as well as our wonderful, wonderful, wonderful team of teaching assistants. Last but not least, I'd like to thank you, dear students, or rather alumni now, for having chosen to study at the Geneva Academy. I wish you all the very best for your future. Judging from what our alumni community has achieved, I am very confident that you will soon become the decision makers, international lawyers, humanitarian and TG experts our world needs. So let's celebrate this. So the best way to celebrate is also around a drink. So we have a beautiful cocktail awaiting you in the cafeteria upstairs. Thank you very much to all of you, and enjoy.